All right. Mic check. Good. So I'm Max Ceron. CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm out there looking for the stories that you love to hear and the ones that are hard to find. Today, we're going back to the well to a company that's given us some great stories, and I think we got another great one today. We have Andrea Armstrong coming to us from the west coast of Canada out in BC, who she works at Seaspan. Andrea, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing, Max?
I'm good. It was a very busy day for me today. I was running around with my head cut off, but this is a good way to end it. How about you?
About the same. We just had a Coast Guard vessel launch that I was able to go see on Monday, and then I'm in a QA role right now. So just lots of paperwork and OQE.
Yay. So tell me, boat launch, a Coast Guard boat launch. What is that like? What entailed that today?
I'm honestly not the best person to speak on it because as a welder, my entire part of like coming into the boat launches was just to be like, oh, it's so pretty, it's going into the ocean.
Cool.
But we have a really great team at Seaspan, and so they basically put it up onto these, I don't know what to call them, but they're self-driving almost, that they have a remote control and they lift the full vessel. They put it out at the VSY.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will go over to VDC at the dry dock. But the scale of launch is always what gets to me. So this will be the second boat that I've seen launch. And then, it's just, for me, it's always the scale of it, of
Is
watching
it like a
this
big
thing
splash?
There is not. They are very good at their job, so it's very controlled and it's very nice and into the water. But it's the size of something, and especially for me, because I've been with the company off and on, because I'm doing my education for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw this when it was like just plates of steel coming through and getting cut, and to have something that goes from like a bunch of plates that you're like tacking together to this completed oceanography vessel is insane.
That's wild.
So it was really cool. We got to bring in families too. They had an open house.
Oh, really? Was it like a barbecue and stuff? Like, let's watch this boat hit the water.
To be fair, they didn't launch the boat with everyone in there, but they did put it up at the end of the dock.
Yeah.
And we were able to bring families into the yard to see, which is really cool. A lot of the people in the yard have kids. So it was really cool to see all of the kids running around and just getting so stoked.
So I've Googled boat launches, and there's some sketchy ones, like massive boats being like rolled down like inflatable tubes, and it's just like giver, man. Like, it's just like once this thing starts rolling down the hill, they just smash into the ocean and float away, and then somebody like catches it somehow, like with a tugboat. And you made it sound like it's not like that at all at Seaspan.
It is not. And I think that's because we do have a really good crew when it comes to movement and for our crane operators. And then we have a really good marine crew. I think if you let the welders be the one to do it, it would probably look more like that. I think anyone from our side of the association would be like, we could roll it down.
Yeah, it'll float. It's fine.
It'll do
the welds
fine.
will hold.
Like, I welded that. It should be good. But thankfully, we are not allowed to do it. So we have a really good crew out there. And I'm always just amazed, especially too, because we have a very large crane called Big Blue. That's a 300 ton. Yeah, it's a 300 ton crane.
You can see Big Blue from across the water.
Yes, you can see Big Blue from most of Vancouver.
Yeah.
It is a landmark and a half, which is always really cool when you get to be working underneath it or come onto site. It also makes it very easy to point out where you work to people.
Oh, yeah. I guess I never really thought about that.
Crane. Yeah. That's over there.
Yeah. Well, let's back up here because like you got a pretty impressive resume for a young woman, and I was looking at it this morning and thinking I'm looking forward to this interview because I mean a lot of the things you do are things that are right in my wheelhouse. I was never in shipbuilding, although we did talk right before the show. I had a little bit of dipping my fingers into it because of some marine annex stuff I did with a college. But you're a Red Seal welder, a level 1 inspector, a wet, which is a welding engineering technologist, and now you're in your third year to be a mechanical engineer.
Yes.
Now that's a lot in a short period of time because you don't look like you're 40 to me. Maybe I'm gauging way off, but that's a lot of stuff going on. So, in order of chronicle here, what was first? Was the Red Seal
Welder.
Welding was first? All right. So, how old were you when you started welding?
Okay, so there's two answers to that. There's when I became an apprentice, which was at 19. And then there's when I first ever struck an arc, but no one told me it was welding, and I don't have trades in my family, so I had no idea what I had actually done was welding, and that was at 16.
And that was high
on
school?
No, that was actually on board a ship crossing the Atlantic, and we got stuck in the doldrums, which is right on the equator. And I had a very cool chief engineer who was like, "Hey, kid, want to learn how to do this? You get to glue metal together with fire." And so at 16, I struck my first arc on a ship, and then went off, lived life, came back, didn't know what welding was, had no idea. Went through BCIT for a women in trades program that you just kind of got to try a couple stuff.
Yeah.
Loved it. Fell in love with welding, got in, did my sea ticket. And then 2 years after that, at 21, I ended up being a shipbuilder. So it was a very cool full circle moment.
Yeah. So there's a couple things to unpack. There's a couple things to unpack in there. First of all, what are you doing on a ship at the equator at 16? That's not a thing people do at 16. They're not like, "Hey, yo, I'm going on a ship at the equator." Like, that's pretty far from BC.
You know what? It was a distance from BC. So I was really lucky. And when I was 16, there was basically like a student deckhand program on board ships. And then, you did school at the same time. And so the ship that I was on board was a fully rigged tall ship. So if most people don't know what that is, think pirate ship.
Yeah, the
so
big
it
masts.
was a steel.
Yeah.
So 3 mast, 15 square sails, 27 sails in total. And we started in the Great Lakes of Canada, went out through the St. Lawrence, crossed the Atlantic the first time over to the Azores in Portugal, went down the coast of Africa, and kind of got to Senegal, Gorée Island, and then went back across.
Rode the current back, yeah.
Rode the current back, which is where I struck an arc for the first time on our way to Barbados.
Okay.
Did the Caribbean, and out of Bermuda, we went back to cross over to France and bring the ship home to Norway. So that was a year from 16 to 17 that I ended up on this whirlwind.
How do you find this? Like, this sounds like an incredible journey. Like, yo, sign me up, man.
My oldest, so the program used to be able to, so it was like you could be grade 11, grade 12, and first year university. And the university students went out of a very small Nova Scotia, well, not very small, but small Nova Scotian university called Acadia, which is where my oldest sister did her first degree. And so she came home and was like, "Hey, I think Andrea would do well at this. We should see if we can get her on this boat."
That's wild.
And I did.
That sounds like such an experience. Like, were you a shippy person before, living and growing up in BC? I mean, there's two types of people that live on the coast, right? There's people that live on the coast and live in the coast. So they're like in the water, they're in boats, they're in canoes, they're in kayaks, or on boats, or on ferries, whatever. Then there's people that live at the coast that don't know how to swim and have never stuck a foot in the ocean, right? And there's both. Like, I'm from South America and Chile. We are all coastal. And half my family's probably never been in the ocean because they're like brutally scared of it. It's something, I don't know, it's just a coastal thing. So were you a kid growing up being like, I love boats, or were you like, boats are weird? I don't know. Like,
No, I loved boats, and that's fully to both of my parents. My mom
wow.
was a commercial diver before she became a nurse, um,
Okay.
and was a kayak, it's like licensed
Enthusiast.
kayak instructor.
Yeah.
And so we grew up fully in
On
the
the water.
water,
Right.
all the time. And my dad started in marine biology before switching over to medicine as well.
Wow.
And so both of my parents, we grew up with like very water-based people,
Mm-hmm.
but also extremely nerdy
Mm-hmm.
water-based people. My mom did drift dives to study octopus, and my dad studied the marine biologist will be upset with me, but the most boring fish known to man, which was the black-eyed goby and kelp.
That
So
sounds
that was
fun. Anything's fun if you study it.
right. So, but that was the like home environment was like
Yeah.
always in a kayak, always on the
Yeah.
water. We all knew how to swim. We all loved being out on the water. So it fit really well to go on the boat, and then it fits very well now as an adult to come back and build them.
Yeah. So you go around this trip around the world, you strike an arc, and then you get back to high school, and it sounds like your family's fairly academic. You didn't have the push for you coming out of high school to get into university and become a marine biologist, kayaker, commercial diver, nurse, medicine man.
There was a push for education. That was my
Mm-hmm.
family's big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was education was key. And it is most people ask me because they usually expect, especially my dad because he's a doc, that they would have been upset when I went trades. And
Mm.
I actually got into university, did half a year of medical physics,
Yeah.
did well,
Barf.
but then was like, not
Yeah.
for me. Not my cup of tea, don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really nervous to tell my family when I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna go drop out and become a welder. And I was really scared to talk to my dad about it. And the first thing he did, he was like, go on, let's hop in the car. And he took me out for dinner. The same he did for both my other sisters when they got into an educational program. Um, and so for my parents and my family, they were like, we've just cared that you get an education. Trades is a great education.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
That's great support.
I don't think I had a prouder person than my dad when I got my Red Seal, to the point he was a problem that he
Mm-hmm.
would like go to random strangers and be like, my daughter's a Red Seal.
And they're like, a what?
And they're like, are you like, what? And he's like, she's a welder. She's a Red Seal. And then
That's awesome.
they would ask him, they're like, what is a Red Seal?
Mhm.
Like,
And he would spiel it all out to them. This is what it is. This is what it does. This is what she does. That's awesome.
yeah. So they were, I got really lucky with that of like very academic family, but they view trades as education, and that was their only push for me was I needed to be educated, and it didn't matter what that education was in.
Well, technically, everything is science, right? Like at the end of the day, everything is a science. So, like, you can dip your toes into welding, and you might just consider yourself a stick welder, and you're just stick welding or MIG welding every day. But what you're doing is science. And if you really want to get into it, there is an endless career path that you can go down, which I see you are on. But we, and I've gone down that path. I started off as a welder at 17, and now I'm executive director at the Canadian Welding Bureau, working codes and standards, and it opens up. It's endless, right? So let's go back to post high school, try university. I went to university for philosophy, ended up becoming a welder. You went for medicine, ended up becoming a welder.
Physics, not medicine.
Yeah, okay. And
we all stayed away from medicine. We knew that from the get-go.
100%. Yeah. So then you start going down this path for welding. Now, as a young female, you're probably 18-ish, maybe coming up on 19, starting your journey. In BC, you have a level CBA format before you can go for your Red Seal. For people across the country, it's the same 3 blocks, just a different name. But did you have any major obstacles? Like, your family's not one.
No.
But what about other obstacles? Did you have any other issues with finding apprenticeships or with the course itself? Like, did you struggle with the welding program at all, or were you pretty good at it?
I was lucky that I like naturally had pretty decent hands. For someone, I had also, prior to becoming a welder, and I think this is where like having good hands came from, I was a jeweler.
Okay.
So I was a jeweler from the time I was about 17, 18. I worked with a silversmith in BC. And so I knew some things, like I knew what oxyfuel was. We used it to do some of our silver soldering. And I was working with really, really fine metals and fire. And so there were parts of that a lot of the welding I didn't necessarily struggle in. Obviously, I wasn't like I was amazing out the bat. That's just not,
but it
that's not what it
translated.
was.
Yeah.
But I didn't have this huge gap that I thought I was going to, because so many of the men that I went through the program with came from a trades background. And I mean, they'd been welding in their garage since they were like 12, 14. And so I was really nervous when I first set up for the program, and the jewelry came in really handy. There's obviously, like, being a woman in a trade, you're going to run into issues. That's,
just
all
a
of us
given.
do. It is a reality of the situation. At the same time, what I found is that you're going to run into a lot of champions. So I had a lot of like men in my life, and a lot of people assume it is the women. And when you meet them, it is for the most part. But I had the amount of men in my life and in my career who were the ones that had my back, who were the ones that got me jobs, got me apprenticeships, the whole bit. Like, and from the get-go, from my first instructor, right? So from my first instructor, I was getting really upset with him. He was passing, someone else's weld, and I was really angry because I'm like, my weld looks better.
Yeah.
Why am I not getting passed? And he finally just pulled me aside. He's like, look, you got to be a good welder if you want to do this, because you need to be competent if you're going to be a woman in the field.
You're gonna have to blow their socks off.
Yeah, and I know you can do it. So go give me a better bloody weld than what you're bringing to me. I don't care that it's not the worst one of the day. Make it good. You shouldn't be aiming for like, better
Good
than
enough.
the worst.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was like my initial step into the trade. I immediately had people who were in there who were just amazing and made sure that I had this pathway through it. And there's always, pardon my language, there's always going to be an asshole. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
Regardless of if you're a man or a woman or whatever, you're going to run into some people that,
it's usually based in envy. It's usually based on jealousy. It's usually based on their own shortcomings that makes them lash out. I mean, we live in a patriarchy. We live in a male-dominated system of society, and the trades are kind of like almost like the worst example of that patriarchy. At the end of the day, you need men to stand up against the patriarchy because they're the ones that own it, right? That's kind of, they're going to make the biggest differences. And I support and absolutely 100% love the growth of women and any gender diversity within the trades. But the men got to back down and be like, yo, like, chill, let things happen.
Right. And I found that, like, I had that without ever having to ask for it. I just I was very lucky. I also think that it is a majority. I think most people that I work with are just lovely, amazing people.
Well, I
for
think
the
it's
most
a whole
part,
new generation
they might be a bit
coming
grouchy.
in. Yeah.
They might be a bit grouchy, 100%. They might tell you to F off, but it's from a place of love, or at least like not a place of hate. And so I found that for the majority of the time, I always had at least one person that really had my back or was really pushing me to kind of develop into a better welder than what I was. Or then when it kept progressing into an engineer and into an inspector. So I got really lucky with a lot of the people that I work with that I consider mentors. And most of them are men, because it is a male dominated field. Like most people I work with are men. Most of my mentors are men, and they've just had my back from the moment I started.
So walk us through your journey through the 3 levels then, because apprenticeship can be kind of a bag sometimes in terms of getting your hours and getting the types of hours you need for getting onto the next level. So were you able to do all 3 years of your apprenticeship in BC, or did you have to chase down some work other places to finish out your hours?
So I stayed BC. I
Yeah.
was a BC girl for my trade. I didn't do an A ticket because in BC you don't need to because it's TIG pipe and special alloys. And I at the last week of my B ticket, I got a shutdown job. And then I kept working throughout that, and I was like, I'm not going back for my A ticket. I have consistent work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go over here. And it is one of those things that, especially now that I've switched more into a science side, I do really wish I had come back for my A ticket.
Just to have it in the bag and it's done, yeah.
It's interesting. It's cool alloys. It's all of those things. And just, I think a little bit of bragging rights just to be like, oh yeah, A ticket. Or same thing with your pressure ticket, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I did my C ticket, and then I went out and I took whatever job I could. And when I started with a stack of resumes in my little Mazda and all of my tools and everything to get ready to do weld tests. And I had worked for a couple of small shops and then started doing predominantly shutdowns in predominantly like sawmills, pulp mills.
So you're working interior BC here now, or?
No, I was most of the sawmills was on the coast. I did do some interior, not a huge amount. But we had a fair amount of work over here. And so I worked, it's closed down now, but I worked at Flavel for a lot of my hours, which is out in Port Moody there, and learned a lot from the guys there. Not always, I think, the safest way to maybe do something, but
no, there's lots of tricks though.
We got it done. But
I always tell people on the show, if you want to learn how to weld, get a maintenance job. You learn how to do everything the wrong way, but hey, it works.
I learned how to form steel with a forklift.
Yeah.
We rolled steel with a forklift.
Yeah.
Which is not how you're supposed to roll steel.
No. And OH&S does not comply. All right.
No. So, and Flavel is no longer running, so you know what? Fair enough. But when I switched over to Seaspan and I saw their forming shaft, I was like,
tools.
That's how you're supposed to do it. Well, like, you guys are so precise. They're like, how did you roll anything? I was like,
tack and smash, man. Tack and smash.
Oh yeah, hot tacks.
Yeah,
hot tacks are a girl's best friend.
Damned right.
I had a millwright get that for me on a t-shirt, and I've lost a t-shirt now, but I had a millwright give me a t-shirt that says hot tacks are a girl's best friend.
True story. Everyone's like, I'll never get it to move that far. Oh yeah, we will. We'll get it to move. Don't you worry about that. Hot tacks and a dog and wedge, you can build anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a chicken foot for good measure. You're good to go.
So you got your Red Seal, and now you're looking at opportunities, right? And obviously you love your province. You seem very, into which I love, because I love Saskatchewan. People make fun of me for it, but screw them. I love where I live. I have had a great career out here and made a pile of money. Everything's great. So, you do what you do where you are. Now, have you stayed in BC your whole career? Or after your Red Seal, did you do some experimenting around? Or, what was next on the list for you?
So I stayed with Seaspan until, because I loved it. I loved shipbuilding. And then I kind of got it into my head of like, I maybe think I want to go back and get more of an education. And so I was like, cool, let's see what we got. And there's a welding engineering team at Seaspan. And prior to Seaspan, I didn't know that existed. I did not know that was an engineering discipline. And when I looked it up at the time, the only licensed by the CWB program was SAIT at Alberta and was at a technologist level. And so I went, okay, well, that's like, I'm going to Alberta. That's where I got to go. So I was out in Alberta.
It's a 2-year program.
It's a 2-year program.
Yeah.
It's a 2-year program. It's an awesome program. I wish more people would take it because it is an awesome program. It is
getting more popular. Now it's all over Alberta. We have one in Saskatchewan, Conestoga, Ontario. It's spreading. It's a great program. And
so SAIT was great. And the way it's called the WET program, which is not the best acronym for it.
No, but, hey,
it is what it is. We took it.
Sort of tracks.
It did well. And so I moved out to Alberta, started doing the more science side of
Mm-hmm.
things. And coming from a pretty academic family, pretty science-based family, it clicked and it was
Yeah.
just fantastic. And I think the big thing for me was because I was a Red Seal and also an adult. Like I was coming
Yeah.
back, I
You
think I started
understand it
at
at another
25.
level. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was just I was had kind of more of my shit together here and
Mm-hmm.
knew what I wanted to come back for. But I started getting into metallurgy and having these metallurgy classes. And then as a welder, there was a lot of stuff that I had learned over trial and error through my career, or just from, it was the way we had to do it for
Tips and
codes and
tricks. Yeah. Yeah.
standards, or from mentors who were
Mm-hmm.
like beautiful, amazing welders that you're like, could weld for 40 years and not produce something that looks as nice, right? Or is as
Mm-hmm.
strong. Uh, and so I did things throughout my career that I did them because they worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to school and we started talking about microstructures.
And you're like,
And,
uh-huh.
and my entire metallurgy course, I felt a little bad for every other instructor because I think I ignored every other class and was like, this is now my favorite thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to learn how to do destructive testing. I got to learn how to do microstructure analysis, learn about, past a basic crystal structure, which we do learn a little bit about
Yeah, the
during your Red
BCC,
Seal.
FCC, the basic
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
you do learn a little bit about, but then getting into things like, carbon
Tetrahedrals.
phase diagrams and getting into like ferrite formations, like
Mm-hmm.
Widmanstadt and ferrite versus acicular ferrite versus like, okay, what's your hardenability, which is ease to form martensite, um, and how that interacts with steel properties. And then all the different things, like
Your
in
magnetism,
your
your
heat
thermal
effect zone,
resistivity, your
everything. Like,
everything. Yeah.
oh,
I'm a metallurgy nerd. It's
right?
basically how I got to where I am, is I rode the metallurgy bus, right? And I always
Because
said
it's a
to my,
good bus.
it's a great bus, and I always told my
It's a
students
good
that
bus.
it's the ultimate problem solver. I said, like, in your life, you can live your entire career as a welder or fabricator without learning metallurgy, and you'll be great. You'll be fine. But when you have a problem arise, something breaks, something cracks, something happens, it's a lot of trial and error to figure it out. But if you got a good metallurgy background, you're going to look at that and immediately narrow it down to a set of principles that you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be one of two things here, and I know how to check. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and it makes problem solving so much easier.
My favorite, and I don't know if you've had this, of like getting to do some very, very basic level failure analysis and actually having it be like a puzzle and a picture
Mm-hmm.
of like, hey, we have this crack. And when you actually put that underneath a microscope, when you acid etch it, when you do all of these things, I guess if there's a
Mm-hmm.
crack and you're doing failure analysis, don't acid etch anything yet. I've probably got the metallurgy instructor yelling at me in the back. But my coolest thing was learning that like the steel will tell you where it broke
Mm-hmm.
because of things that are called like chevrons and like river run lines, and you can actually, like with fatigue cracks,
You can see the
it
grain.
looks like
Yeah.
waves. It looks like
Mhm.
waves on a beach under a microscope. And you
Mhm.
can see it, and then you can see where it reaches that critical thickness point where all of a sudden it turns into a cleavage in this fast fracture. And when I found that, I was like, are you telling me there's been puzzles in my steel this entire time?
Yes, there
Like
has.
for like 8 years, you're telling
Yeah,
me that I
yeah.
didn't have to, like, that I could have been taking this apart and it would show me where it broke or why it broke the way it did.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, that was for me the biggest. As
For
soon
me,
as I got into the wet program and did that first metallurgy course, I was set. I wasn't going back.
the biggest thing that made my brain kind of flip completely over to that side was that I used to be a stainless welder. That was like my meal ticket. I welded stainless, TIG, MIG, stick,
Oh, you
flux
were a
core.
prettier welder than me.
So I did that for years, and I made a lot of money doing stainless work in Saskatchewan for mining company manufacturing.
Yep.
And there's so much you have to do to be careful around stainless that I had just learned from procedures, from working with people. And then when I got into metallurgy, like I feel like stainless is maybe the easiest material to really see what happens with grain migrations and temperatures and grain boundaries and all the things that can happen, and the carbon pooling and the hydrogen's in those pockets, and in stainless you really see it. Like, you ever bend a stainless plate and it cracks, you can just look at the crystals. You just put them in the light. You don't need acid, you don't need nothing. You just put it in the light and be like, I know what's going on. And I realized that, like you said, the experience that's out in the field on the floor gets you to the same place, but this is coming at it from another angle, right? And that's why I love engineers that know how to weld and welders that know how to engineer, because they kind of got the big picture, right?
It's also, it's cool to see something that you've done for so many years that you've done because it's the way you're supposed to do it, and then be able to answer why. And that was when I was an apprentice. I think I annoyed a lot of people because I'd be like, but what? But why do I have to preheat? Like, it's a tap. Why do I have to preheat? Like, what's this?
It's going to get hot anyways.
And so it was really cool, especially for me going back, to be like, oh, that's why. Like,
now, what about your family? Like, now that you're back in the science fold, was your mom and dad being like, we knew you couldn't escape?
No, they're, like I said, they're so just proud of education, but they really do consider everything
a form of education.
Very equal, right? Like, it needs to be formal education, but trades, engineering, like, they're really proud of me that I'm going back now as an adult. I think they definitely feel a bit better that I'm no longer on tools.
Just for safety, health reasons.
For longevity, for sure. I definitely know that I think it makes both my parents quite happy that I'm no longer like fully on tools or doing anything super dangerous anymore. And that I'm more in a lab base, that I think they just breathe a bit easier, especially because they don't have that background. And it is dangerous work. It is all of those things.
It can be. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think too, for them, especially not coming from a trades background where you're used to things like heavy duty machinery, where you're used to things
300-ton cranes,
and like it can just be a bit, and they've seen some of the sites I've worked at, and so I think it can just be a bit like, it makes them feel a bit better that I'm out of that now, right? And that I'm more into a science side, that it has I have a lot of longevity in the career, that I'm not as necessarily likely to get injured, right?
So you do your time in Calgary, you get your 2-year wet program underneath your belt. Any plans of sticking around in the madness of Alberta, or were you bounce, dip out back to BC?
No, I think if I stayed in Alberta, I would have been very bad and started pouring salt in the Bow River. I think I would have accidentally killed all of their wildlife because I was really missing the ocean.
Yeah.
I grew up on the water, and I love being back home on my coast. On any coast, I'm quite happy, but especially back where I grew up. And no, I do think I would have accidentally poisoned wildlife if I stayed much longer. Just because I would have put a lot of salt in the Bow River just to feel like I was home.
So you head back to BC. What are your thoughts employment wise? Are you like, okay, I got a new designation now? You start stacking them, right? So now the resume is starting to look pretty stacked, right? Did you have your level 1 inspector yet?
Yep. Yeah, I got it at the end of the tech.
Usually it's part of the last year of the program yet. So you got your tech, you got your tech program, then you got your level 1. Did you go right back to Seaspan and say, hey, new me, you guys got a job for me? Or did you venture out and look for other stuff?
So kind of twofold. So I worked for Seaspan while I was doing my education. I came back in the summer, and their Weld Eng team was nice enough to take me on as an intern. And I got to help set up the lab and help do some lab work for them for the destructive testing lab, which was amazing. And was much nicer equipment than I ever used at school. And they
brand new.
They have some really, really cool Weld Enges over there who were just kind enough to walk me through a lot of more high level stuff. And And so I obviously was like, okay, like I want to shipbuild on the West Coast at Seaspan.
Yeah.
But I also looked at it and I looked at kind of point in life because I'm 27. And I thought, if I want to go get the full degree, it's a lot easier to do it now. I'm not too tied down right now. You know, I'm young enough that if I wait another kind of 5, 6 years, family, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
No, you don't. And so I was like, you know what? Let's,
Ride
I'll
it
start
out.
kind of getting
Yeah.
prepped for jobs, but let's see if I can get into this bridge program to UVic. And I am the first welding engineer that they've ever taken, which is a little terrifying.
So I was going to ask you, because UVic is not known as a welding engineering college. It's
Nope.
basically U of A, the CCWJ, or Waterloo, which is the the CAJW. So, between those two colleges in Canada, those are the only two really known for welding engineering programs.
But and to my knowledge, and this is maybe where I lack some education on it, to my knowledge, you don't come out fully designated as a weld eng.
No, you come out as a materials engineer or a version of it, and the accreditation.
And there's a certificate, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you there.
Yeah. So now you're the first under the full weld eng at UVic.
So I'm not. So I'm a mechanical eng at UVic, but I'm the first weld eng tech that they've ever accepted into this bridge program, into mechanical engineering. So I went to and was like, hey, here are my marks. Here's my experience. Here's how similar our math and our basic courses were. Would you guys mind? Can we work something out? Because they don't actually take from our program. And so I'm the kind of tester child. I take one extra course. And so far so good. So far,
I'm
so
sure
good.
it'll be fine. The education's going to be there.
Well,
really.
I'm already a semester through, so I'm a semester done. I got one more chance for a semester, and then in January I should be going over to UVic. So it's a Camosun bridge program through Camosun to UVic or to UBC.
I used to have a friend that taught at Camosun. I don't know if he's there anymore, Al Bray, but he was a good teacher. He's got to be old now. I'm old now. But anyways, yeah, Camosun's got great programs. Yeah.
Oh, Camosun's fantastic. So So that's kind of where I'm at for right now.
Or Al Sumai. Sorry, Al Sumai. That was his name. Sorry. In case he's listening, I didn't get it wrong.
So that's kind of where I am. And the choice for me was when I looked at what was required from the CWB. I have a Red Seal ticket. I have a welding engineering technologist. I have an inspector's license. I have so many years in the field. You guys do look at mechanical and materials. And so I thought, okay, mechanical, the weld eng tech is really specialized and it gives me a designation, right? So that's why I went tech. And then the mechanical, I could either go to Waterloo, I could go to U of A. I wouldn't come out as a designated weld eng. I'd come out as a materials eng with a certificate, but I wouldn't come out as a designated weld eng. And it's another 4 years.
Yeah.
Versus I can come out as a mechanical engineer in 2 and a bit.
2 and a bit. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let's do the 2 and a bit. Then I'll apply on a case by case.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, I can always go do a master's. And if I do a master's, I can go to England. I can go to places where that educational pathway is really, really established for welding engineering.
Yeah. One of the best in North America is in Denver. If you wanted to stay in North America, but
I stay away from the States.
I get it.
which is, but it's always one of those things. The States have never been a place that I've wanted to go live. I love to go visit. My one of my other sisters lives down in LA. There's a lot of people.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people in the UK too. But
yeah.
But so for me, I kind of looked at it. I thought, okay, this gets me the eng degree.
Your PN,
my background and my other tickets give me the weld eng. Realistically, too, even if I don't want to go add more education, I can work in welding engineering. I can apply for these jobs because I have so much experience, because I have these other designations. And
you're still really young.
Yeah, and then now I also, the knock on wood, haven't finished it yet. Should hopefully also have a PN.
Yeah.
Right. So come out and get my professional designation after. And so for me, it was like, okay, there's no set pathway that's super well established in Canada to get the welding engineering. This is the way I think is going to work best for me, because I also wanted to start really specialized, because I am a welder.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know what I want to come back for. I want to start specialized. SATE to me looked the most specialized off of the bat, that it was, the whole program was focused on welding engineering, right?
Yeah.
It was really, really, that's what its goal was. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to start with. We'll try the transfer. We'll get the engineering degree, whatever it is, and we'll go from there. Right.
And it's not that uncommon. Like, I know quite a few welders that got their Red Seals that ended up engineers, and they're like my favorite engineers I've worked with, because we speak the same lingo. You know what I mean? It's like we can talk up, like I can talk the talk of the high game, but I can also talk down and talk the talk of like the floor game, you know, like, and that's really valuable, right?
Yeah, the middle. And also I feel like hopefully the goal is that you can bridge it a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That you can help the guys that you've worked with on the floor, and you can help your kind of newer colleagues on the engineering side understand. And, you know, if all goes well, hopefully you make it a bit better for everybody.
And
that
everyone
it's
goes
not...
and has beers together and
it's
and have a
big
family
community. And they walked off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Engineers and welders, hand in hand.
Someday we can dream. All right, well, let's take the break for our commercials and supporters and advertisers right now. And when we get back here with Andrea Armstrong, who's out in BC, we're going to be talking about what she does now for a living, her day-to-day, and then what's in the possible future, because I'd imagine there's some thoughts there. So don't go anywhere here on the CWB Association podcast. We'll be right back.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and I'm here with Andrea Armstrong, who's coming to us from the beautiful west coast of Canada out in BC. So right before the break, we kind of caught up to where you are in your educational, journey. You're right on the cusp of getting into the legit engineering program and get working on that mechanical engineering degree. What's the hope? Because once you get to this level of education, there's kind of a couple things. One is R&D, right? There's a desire for people to want to go down the R&D train, which is kind of like top tier, but way less work in the R&D world than in other, more, I guess, tactile industries. And then the other piece is to be like the engineer, the retained engineer for a shop, but whether it's a foundry working with steels or construction, working with procedure development and whatever. Where is it that you see your role evolving into as you work towards this education?
I think there's a couple paths, and I don't know if any of them are solidified. I also just don't think that's how I've usually gone about things. I have places and goals for where I want to be and the type of work that I want to do. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. And I'm really open to something coming out of left field and being like, oh,
cool.
Had no idea this was on the horizon, but yeah, sure, let's give her. Because I also think that's how I got into trades, was being like, what's this great thing to the corner? So I've never, and I've had so much joy in my career from something that wasn't on my radar. But yeah, so I think I have some goals for myself. I have some places or ideas of where I would want to go. But also we'll see. We'll see where it goes. And I think we hit one of them on the head, which was R&D.
Yeah, well, R&D is like the beautiful science, right? Because you spend your day playing and proving and finding things that hopefully may not be found. Now, most of the people I know that are young engineers going down the R&D train, that turns into a master's, that turns into a PhD, that turns into a whole other world, which I think is wonderful. But it gets you further and further away from the floor. Are you ready to be away from the floor? Like, are you okay if that chapter of your life moves on and you end up in like on the dream team, like some crazy, like there's think tanks in Canada, like Innotech and places that all they do is wild, dreamy metallurgy stuff all day long, right?
Yes and no. I find too, at least from what I've seen, and like I said, very new to this side of the field and new to the engineering side of a lot of, I kind of look at it the same as like when I looked at smaller shops. There's more variety and it's almost more hands-on engineering that in some ways, yes, it's very removed from shop floor and from production and from manufacturing. But in other ways, it's brand new, it's research. You have to physically do it.
And it's a real problem. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of production engineering where they're going down and building the thing. And that's where I would be okay with it because I'm a tradesman and I'm a tradesman at heart. And so if you're telling me I can do the science and then physically build it with my hands and do the work in some type of aspect, I like that idea. I like that idea of it still being a hands-on part. It's why I really like lab work as well. Like I really enjoy lab work and destructive testing and actually doing it, right? Like of breaking the samples and polishing them and doing the work and doing the science and kind of some of the like work with it.
All right. So, the R&D dream, it's true because when you get to the kind of PhD level of R&D, you're doing things that haven't been done before. So half the battle is even figuring out the machinery to do the things that you need to do that you think you need to do. You know what I mean?
And so that's where that to me would still be appealing, even though it's so removed. Obviously, the other thing is that like I've come back to work for Seaspan each summer. I've been shipbuilding in Canada for most of my career. And so I would love to stay in shipbuilding and I would love to keep building boats and I'd love to see different sides of what that looks like. And I've seen a couple sides of it, but I would love to see more of that. And I would love to see new boats and I really want to be part of the polar that, Canada's putting forward polar ships. So I really want to be part of that. So I have a lot of goals within shipbuilding. And if they will take me back, hopefully within Seaspan.
Are you a part of any of the shipbuilding associations for construction in Canada? Because there's some really cool ones. Like there's a big conference in Vancouver in just a few weeks here. The ABCMI, let me see. And I went to this one and I've been to a Meritech. Meritech is a yearly conference.
I know Meritech.
That one's is amazing.
I've never been, but I would really want to go to Meritech.
And that's the thing for someone who's like engineering heavy and really into shipbuilding, you got to go to these. So the Association of British Columbia Marine Industries, ABCMI, look them up. They got a conference coming up right away in BC, and like I said, they're really, really great people at these things, right? Because you're surrounded by people with the same love for you. And I just read the write-up for the conference coming up in Vancouver, and it sounds like it's going to be a lot about defense contracts and possible future shipbuilding on the West Coast. Meritech goes back and forth west-east, so like if it's east, it's Irving. If it's west, it's Seaspan, kind of like the back and forth. But the science and technology going into shipbuilding is rapidly accelerating because it kind of got left behind. For a long time, it was like, oh, we know how to build ships. There's nothing wrong with them. They're great. Let's just build them bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But now I think in the modern world, we're looking at engineering opportunities, better materials, lighter materials. Because how often do you use aluminum on a large-scale industrial boat? Like, never. No. But, because there's not those opportunities. Well, maybe there's other materials that could be lighter and safer and more usable. I'm going off on a tangent now, but I was watching them at one of the marine conferences I went to, a new process where they use cold spray welding, but they're not using metal little shot. They're using like a type of metal plastic compound that is not it won't corrode under the salt water. So this is because the shaft that goes from inside to outside is always a huge wear place for boats because it's a transition from oil to salt, and this material would protect all the stuff without wearing off. And see, stuff like this is like, that's cool stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
No, and there's really cool stuff. And I know for me, like a lot of what I got to see at Seaspan was like robotics, like welding robotics at work is wild. And being able to be a robotics operator, and then being able to do a lot of the technical writing for like work instructions, was a lot of like how I first started transitioning into engineering sides, was from this like being a welder and then welding robotics operator. And so, yeah, a lot of that. And that's where another part of like going the mechanical route of like, okay, I can learn more and I can fall on my kind of laurels here for a lot of the welding stuff. And I can always go back and add more education if I need to. But Lord knows I don't know anything about what's actually doing the robotics welding. And that's where the mechanical engineering, the last 2 years of studying specialized with weld eng first and then doing mechanical, that's one of the other things I really want to look at is those huge welding robotic systems.
Yeah, the automation systems that are coming out now. Yeah,
they're like, yeah, no, they are just the coolest things. I feel like everyone that is a human gives their robots names.
Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah,
I feel like any type of technology you work with every single day, it has to have a name. And
you already have names picked out in your head for when you get a robot?
Absolutely, I do. One of them will be Theodore the Third.
Oh,
I don't know why. No one's named Theodore in my family, but I will have a robot named Theodore the Third. That's my
TNT.
That's maybe my main goal for education. I've actually done, with the trade, let's say, 4 years.
Do you have your favorite welding machine?
9 years. 9 years of education to name a robot is, I think, a suitable goal.
Well, I when I had all my years up, I think it was about 13 years of schooling, and I'm still going. Like, I mean, there's still courses that pop up in my world, and I'm like, I'm gonna take that. That looks really interesting, right? Like, but I don't have a robot, and I've never named it. I don't know if I've named any of my welding machines. Is there something wrong with me that I haven't? Definitely.
That you should be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I have some deep trauma that I need to work on.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. That's actually, I'm a little shaken on the call.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And for the people listening, please send me help. Like,
I think we need to get you googly eyes to put on your welding machines, because then I think you would name it. I think if we gave them little human-like features.
Or animal features, because I love cats. Maybe if it had cat ears on it, I'd name it something. And I have a turtle. I love my turtle. I love turtles. Welding machines kind of look like turtles. There we go. Now I'm forming something.
Yeah, it's going. It just took a minute.
I just sent you in a chat, just by the way. I just sent you a chat link
I saw
to
that.
the ABCMI.
So
it's actually, the conference is sponsored by Seaspan, so I bet if you talk to them, that they could send you, be like, hey, go check it out. Liz is usually at them. She's usually one of the people presenting. So
I was about to say, I think Liz does go to them. I think I've heard her talk about some of the conferences before. Unfortunately for me, I think it's like right in the middle of my school.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
That's usually where I don't end up going to a huge amount of conferences, with going back to school. But I was able to get to the CC West conference.
Oh, nice.
And that was really interesting, and that was very cool. And just seeing women from kind of around Canada and all the different stuff that they were doing.
So let's talk a little bit before we get to the end of the interview, because we've already blown through an hour. Just so you know, like this is going so fast. It's awesome. As a woman now, getting up into like the higher echelon of your career, you've proven the proof is in the pudding or in the puddle. And how about, your the proof is in the puddle. I like that. And your welding.
You're making slogans.
Yeah. And now the welding engineering technician, level 1 inspector, now back to college for university. At some point, do you see yourself as a female mentor yourself? Like, are you looking at yourself as a mentor yet? Because I can tell you from the outside that you are, but you don't really cross that line until you feel it. Because I remember where I was at a point where I was realizing a lot of people at work were asking me questions and asking me for advice, and I'd be working with engineers. And at one point I was like, you know what? I think I crossed the line. I think now I'm the person people ask for help instead of me asking others, right? Do you feel like you're getting there, or you want to be there?
I definitely want to be there eventually. I think it's very specific for me because I've gone back to school. And I've gone back and it's related, but it's a switch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I'm learning again, and I am green again, and I
it's a
am
whole new
making
audience.
mistakes again. And so there are certain things that especially when I get, and then in another way too, I've gone into this, and so I feel like I'm getting a bit farther from like active shop floor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll have some apprentices like ask me something, and I'm like, oh, it's been a minute. Like, let me look this up before I tell you to go do something. Or like give you advice on what this is. Of like, I'm gonna need to go pull all my settings again and like, scrolling through the phone to find it. So I think I'm in a bit of a middle ground right now of where in some ways I do feel that. And then in other ways I feel like I'm brand new again. Right? Where
I don't think
like,
that'll ever end for you. I get the feeling like you're just gonna be an education dragon. Someone called me that because like you hoard education. You just keep like, oh, learn more. It's mine. It's my cave of knowledge. But that doesn't mean that you don't represent. And I'm trying to put the bug in you now to become more involved with the youth, because your pathways, even to now, represent a huge obstacle for many people, women and men, all genders, of getting out of a trade and into something education wise, or getting out of education and back into a trade. And you're showing like that wall's not as big as people think it is, right?
It was a hard transition. It definitely was. It was a hard transition for culture. It was a hard transition for confidence of going back to an educational setting. So it definitely is, there's some fear there. And there was for sure fear for me. I was, scared out of my wits, but I looked at it and was like, oh, I really want to do this. It's interesting. I want to see where it goes. So we're going to try. We're going to give her the college try. And I think one of the things that really helped me was having the Red Seal. Because I thought, okay, if I fail, if everything goes to and I've put all this money out,
you got a career.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I got a ticket. I got multiple tickets. I'm going to be okay. Like worst case scenario is not terrible. Yeah. And if it means the school takes a bit longer,
there's no
that's
pressure.
fine. If I need to go pick up shutdowns during the summer, okay. That's okay. So I think for me, sorry. So for me, I think a lot of the transition that made it easier was trades. Yeah. Was that I was like, okay, I'm confident in one thing. It makes me some money. I'm going to be okay. I have the ability to go do this. And it's one of the things that I do say now, especially to women. I say it to men as well, but mostly for women, because I find that it's not something we're talked about as much. Of like when I'm having, my kind of nieces and nephews or friends' kids who are coming to this point of end of high school, graduating, and they're asking for advice and they're not too sure what they want to do. I'm like, go get a trade. Yeah. Go get a trade first. And if you want to go get more education,
you have the luxury to decide.
You can do it. But there's nothing wrong with starting at a trade. There's nothing wrong with starting in university, but that is university can often be a lot more expensive, a lot slower before you have any sort of tickets or backing that you can work on. And so that's been a big one, that it's been really cool to see some like younger women starting to be like, I'm trades, and that doesn't mean that trades and education is separate. And I think that was maybe the cool one for me, was like, I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, I was bad at school, so I'm gonna go get a trade. And I'm like,
what's that have to do with it? Yeah.
Like, also, there's so much math in my trade. Like, there's so much math in welding. There's so much science. So many of the smartest people I've met are welders. Go away. Like, there's
it's a bias that's not necessarily real, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things of like I think a lot of the reason trades work well for people, why they worked well for me, they're a different type of education.
People learn differently.
You learn hands-on, and that works a lot better. And maybe you find out you're a lot better at learning math and learning trigonometry and angles, if you're measuring the angles and seeing how they react with each other when you're building a staircase. Maybe that works for you. It worked well for me.
So, we're getting close to the end of the interview. At this part of the interview, normally I ask people like, end game, where do you want to be? What do you want to do long term? But I feel like we've already kind of figured that out about Andrea. Shipbuilding, R&D, something rad. Okay, got it. That's basically that's your window, and there's going to be something in there that you'll probably get. Now, in terms of, the goals that you have, outside of professionally, like you want to be an engineer and you want to do these things, but what are the things that you would like to see yourself play out in terms of other roles as you get older? Do you see yourself as a business owner? Do you see yourself as a consultant? Do you see yourself as a teacher? Are these any of the pieces that have crossed your mind?
I think they're all definitely thoughts. I think I'm far enough away from a lot of them right now that it's just kind of like, okay, this is the next step here. Let's get that done. I think one of the things that I would love to see, and it ties in to the R&D that I would love to be a part of, is lab work and like lab manager and starting those things. And I could see business owner and I could see all those things, but I think for the stuff that I like to do, you got to be with big companies. You have to be, or you need to be with government.
Where the money is, like the NRC labs or anything cool like that. Yeah.
And because I want to do cool things. And so I think it's...
Have you been to the NRC lab in Vancouver?
No, I haven't been in.
Oh, dude, that's cool.
I've seen photos of it.
Next time I'm out there, I always go visit one of the doctors there, the PhD weld engineers that works there, Mr. Zhao. He always gives me a tour and shows me all the coolest thing. I should give you a ring next time I'm in Vancouver, and I'll take you on a tour of that place. It is so cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they got some cool toys in there.
They're so cool. But so I think that style of work for right now, I really like this idea of shipbuilding, but as also like ROVs and deep sea research. I'm lucky enough, I have a great partner who is a pure scientist, and who does deep sea work and works with ROVs. And so starting to see that kind of stuff and actually works on all the Coast Guard vessels that Seaspan builds.
So everything's tied together.
Everything's intertwined. So there are a lot of aspects that I could see happening, but I think we're just going to see as we go.
Yeah.
And awesome. I not say no to any of them and just see where it ends up, because I think it'll end up somewhere cool. Although awesome. I do have one that I will gladly buy you a bottle of scotch, whatever you want. If you know anyone that explosive welds, I would at one point in my life
want to see that
process. I want to see it. I want to do it at one point. I don't need to do it multiple times. I would like to see explosive welding happening.
Well, I'll see what I can do. We'll have to stay in touch.
Because that, to me, I realize it's so far away from like my own personal goals and like my career,
but it's dope.
Shipbuilding. Yeah. But it's so cool.
It is.
It's so intense, and also
even the way. Yeah, I was about to say the way it welds it with the swirls, like it gets those crazy swirls and eddies. It's like, what? It crochets itself to the other metal. Like
it's wild. I first really learned about it in my Eng Tech, and I was like, this was an option that no one spoke to me about. You're telling me I could have an explosives ticket as a welder? Like, where was this information, BCIG?
All right, let's wrap up the interview here, Andrea. This has been fantastic, but let's do a hypothetical here, because it sounds like you've had a really adventurous career path, which I love and I applaud, and I recommend to anybody out there to be adventurous. Don't be scared. Just get out there and try. But if you could, knowing what you know now in your life, and the experiences you've had, and there's quite a few, could go back to right before you started the welding program, your first welding program, what advice would you give yourself to prepare for the journey you know now that you went down? What advice would you give yourself if you could go back, like in that time machine?
I would get more tickets than what I did. I would
Yeah.
say go to Alloy, get as many tickets as you can get, because I got into this view of like I'm a welder and I want to make money and I'm 19 and so I'm going to go to shutdowns and I'm going to stick weld and I'm just going to chase shutdowns, and who really cares about the educational side of the welding? I don't need my A ticket. I'm working in shutdowns. I'm working stick welding. I don't need it. And I think I would have told myself, take the time off, take the paychecks off. Like you will have so much fun with the more weld experiences that you have and the more tickets that you have, and the more versatility that you have as a welder, I think.
Because it really does open up different jobs. It really does.
And it's just cool stuff. And it is one of those things, like I wish I had done, more alloyed and more like pipe and TIG welding. But I got into this thing that I was like, well, I want to make money and I have the shutdowns and the stick welding job. So that's what I'm going to do. And then Seaspan was mostly flux core, and they do have a great pipe crew. And I know that if I had gone back for my A,
you could have done that.
I could have done that. And I could have done it within the company, but I left for my education. I left for a different side. But I think I would have definitely told myself that, hey, yes, welding, you can make a lot of money. But that's not what it should be about, that you take the time and enjoy the education of it.
All the different experiences, all the different things. Yeah.
All the different sides of it. I'm trying to think of what else I would say to myself. I would probably say slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down. I got my no, physically. Yeah. Physically, I moved too fast as an apprentice, and I got told by a lot of older welders, and I got hurt a couple times. And I think I would have just told my younger self of like, slow the speed down. Be safer than what you're being.
Yeah, you're gonna hurt yourself or somebody else. Yeah,
you're gonna just titch it back a notch.
Yeah.
I think would have been a much less like, exciting one, but would have just been like, you need to stop moving so quickly. Your grinder's not done running. Like, you look dumb. You've almost taken out poor Bob. Like, slow down a little bit. Chill out. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the big one would just be like, yes, Trey, yes, you want to go out and make money and get your hours and work, but, be okay with coming back and doing more tickets and really push yourself to go get as many designations as you can get. Right, because that's the other thing of like, I welded pipe, but didn't sit through my pressure pipes because I was like, well, again, I'm working shipbuilding.
I got work,
I got work, and I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have gone, hey, here's this super cool welding ticket or whatever. They're just more tickets, and they give me more versatility. And I did start to do that once I was later on in my apprenticeship and once I was a Red Seal, but not pressure pipe, but like, being more open to doing different sides of the industry. But I think that would be a big one. And I think what I would tell a lot of younger apprentices of like, you're going to have work and it's going to be awesome and you're going to get these paychecks and you're going to want to just go, but make sure that you're keeping up on the education side and keeping open, and make sure you're keeping up with your designations and your tickets. Okay?
That's great advice. And it's very, very true. Very, very true. And I think most of the welders that I know, later in life, as you start looking back, the welders that really worked themselves into great jobs, great positions, great places, cool programs and jobs and projects are the ones that took the time to learn a new thing, get the new ticket, learn the procedure, understand what you're doing. They're the ones that climb quicker than the ones that are just hammering it out, which I get. Everyone's got a different skill set. And I've always been able, I'm a pretty good welder, but there's always someone better. Right. So you got to pick your battles and see where your niche is. Right.
And I think maybe I would be the last, I know we're running out of time here, but the last one I would say is once I got my Red Seal, I felt like I learned a lot more from other people. And I think because as an apprentice, especially as a young apprentice and a young woman apprentice, I had a bit of a chip about like, yeah, I know how to do that. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. And
I hate it when I see young people do that. They're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, but are you really? And it's
like, well, and the thing is like, I never said that I knew something if I didn't, but I thought like, yeah, I can do a fillet weld with a stick. I know how to do that. Why would I watch someone else? And then as I got older into my apprenticeship, and then once I got my Red Seal, watching guys that yeah, we're doing the same weld. It holds to the same amount, but oh my God, are they fantastic at it? And just having the bit of humility of like, yeah, I am a ticketed welder and I am all these things. He's amazing, and I'm going to sit and I'm going to put my hood on and I'm going to see how he's
Just
doing
watch,
that
yeah.
and watch. And be open to being that, right? Because I was always really good about not saying I could do something if I didn't understand it. But I also was really bad in the way that once I did understand it, even at a basic level, I was like, cool, no more need to watch and listen and learn to the point that it's at this different level
You're like done
of
with it.
grit,
Yeah.
right? I was like, yeah, I can fill it out great. I can open root great instead of having that to sit and watch and be like, I'm going to keep learning and I'm going to keep learning, till I retire.
Till I
There's
die.
always going to be, there's always going to be a better welder
Yeah.
than me. There's always going to be people that are willing to show me a different way to do something. I think that was one of the ones that I really wish I would have known a bit younger. I think I would have
That's
been a much
awesome.
better welder.
Awesome, Andrea. Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for taking the time today to tell us your story. And I think there's a lot people can take out of this package and say, they can apply it to their own lives because, you are running at 100 miles an hour and good for you, man. It's a hard pace and do it while you can, right? It gets harder to do it when you're older. So you're doing the right things. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Max. Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you bet. And any shout outs you'd like to send out to anybody or hellos?
Stephen Kenny at State, my first metallurgy instructor. I'm so sorry I asked you so many questions. He has been a huge mentor. There are so many people at Seaspan, like Liz Neufeld is one of them, who I'm like, thank you so much. There are so many people that touched my career. But
Awesome.
definitely off the bat, my first metallurgy instructor, because I feel so sorry for that poor man. So many questions all the time. I still email him questions. I have not been in that program for a little bit now.
Yeah.
And he still emails me back answers because he's a kind man.
Yeah, no, I have students reach out to me all the time, and I love replying to them. I love that they still think of me. It makes me feel good.
But
awesome. All right. So all the people that have been following and watching and downloading our podcast, please continue. We love what you're doing. We're doing lots of movements out there. We got lots of programs coming up. We're going to be down in FabTech USA in Orlando in October. We're going to be at the AWMI conference in November in Nashville. We're going to be probably taking the Roadshow podcast at a few other places throughout the year. The chapters are revving up. There's going to be chapter events happening in every province across Canada. And you know what? We're all getting out there. We're networking. We're mentoring. We're helping out the community. And that's what it's all about. So appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Keep downloading them, commenting us. And if you have anything you'd like us to talk about topic-wise, or if you think you know someone cool that you'd like me to interview, just shoot me a message on Instagram. I'm AskMax75 on IG, or reach out to the CWB Association anytime. We're always around and we're always looking for great stories. So thanks a lot. Tune in for the next one. I'll catch you there.
We hope you enjoyed the show.